All right, today I am going to share the next generation science assessment tasks with you. These are fully online formative assessment questions that you can use with your students. So you can use them with your distance learners because they are online. You could use them with your in-class students. They were designed by Concord Consortium and they were designed as formative assessment questions, although there are some that you could definitely use as summative assessments depending on the grade and the subject that you teach. Right now, they don't have questions developed for every single grade or subject. So if there are not questions that align to the standards that you teach, I just want you to know that they're there and you can go look at how they've patterned their questions and use them to write your own questions, particularly for practices that tend to be a little bit difficult to assess and maybe really difficult to assess with your distance learners. For example, planning an investigation or carrying out an investigation might be one that's a little difficult with distance learners. So you could go see how they wrote their questions to test those things and then just steal their format to write your own questions that go with your own standards. So we're looking at one question right now. So this is a question that focuses on modeling. And so students watch this video, they have a prompt, and then they actually create their own model. And so for this one, they would actually open this up, they would make their model, and they would type a description. So these are the types of, this is what some of these questions look like, and I'll show you a couple more in a minute. So to get to these, they are on the science website for the district. So I'll put a link to this in the comment section. And so if you go to any of the grade level or subject pages, there is a link in the distance learning section. So this top section is kind of our district resources. And then a couple more sections down, there is a section on distance learning. And so we are looking for the next generation science assessment tasks. So if you click on that, you'll get there. I'll put a link directly to it in the comments, or you can also just Google NGSS Assessment Concord and it'll probably come up. I'm going to go ahead and close these. When you get here, if you decide you do want to use these, you can set up a teacher account. It's free. Once your teacher account is set up, you can set up your classes however you want. To get in, students just have to put their name and then the class code. So they don't have to use an email or anything to set up their own account that way. They can just get in using your class code, and then you can go in and see their work. So I'm not going to go through all of that. There are instructions here if you decide you want to do that. We're just going to look at a couple of the assessment tasks. So you can search through them. I'm just going to go through the categories really quickly. So the chemical reactions, these align to standards in 6th grade, 8th grade, and chemistry. The next section on energy, these align to standards in 6th grade, 8th grade, and physics. So some of these are would go with strand 2 in physics, some of the thermodynamics, and these are really basic, so they might be a good place to put at the beginning of your unit as a formative assessment. The photosynthesis questions would align with 8th grade and biology. The biological transformations of matter and energy also go with 8th grade and biology. The ecosystem interactions really align just to 6th grade. There's not a ton in here that aligns really well to the biology. So that one is mostly just 6th grade. And then the transfer of matter and energy is 6th grade and biology. So you should know, if you're a high school teacher, that these are aimed at middle school students. But I think they would actually be really useful at the beginning of a unit in high school as a formative assessment to help your students think back to what they learned in middle school and to help you see if they remember anything that they learned in middle school. So I think that they are useful for both middle and high school. So we'll look at a couple of them. So we already looked at one that was on modeling. So that was in this one, the one that we just looked at. So let's also look at one that is on constructing an explanation. So we can see this one is on constructing a scientific explanation. So when I open this up, there are a couple to choose from. We'll just look at the first one. So this one doesn't have a video. It does have a little simulation. So students will be using this to gather some evidence. And then there's a really nice little scaffolded explanation here. So students are going to make a claim. They're going to come up with some evidence. So in this case, the evidence is going to come from the data that they generate. And then they're also going to type in their reasoning. And so the reasoning, just as a reminder, this is where we're using just general science concepts to explain how and why the evidence that we use support our claim. And so these are the three things that go into a scientific explanation. So this question is a really nice scaffold for that. This is a great example also if you don't have questions, if there are not questions here that align to your standards, of how you could set something up in Canvas. So if you wanted to give students an interactive where they are generating data and then give them 3 constructed answer or constructed response questions where they could put in their 3 things, that is a great way to build your own formative assessment. So that is one example. So not all of the explanation ones are set up exactly like that. Some of them have different formats. So you could go look around and see some different ways that they set up their questions. This one is one where students would be planning an investigation. So again, we'll just look at the first one here. And so for this one, it just gives us a prompt. So it gives us some background information here about Jessica and the investigation she's doing. And then we have 4 questions that let students plan some of the steps of the investigation and then also explain why they would plan their investigation that way. So this again is one that you could just give your students as a formative assessment somewhere, or if you wanted to just steal this format and build your own question that aligns better to the standards that you teach, you could do that. And we'll just look at one more. So we're not going to look at every single practice that they have built into these. Let's see. Let's look at a data analysis one. So let's look at this one. So here's a data analysis one. And we'll see what Peter's up to here. So in this one, it gives us some information in a picture, and then we have some data that the students are going to use to answer this question. On this one, it looks like they are going to have to apply their understanding of the interactions among these birds to figure out which line represents each of the different species and then explain their answer. So these are just some of the examples of tasks that are there. I hope that you have a chance to go poke around and either find some questions that you could use with your students or some ideas of how you could format some questions that you could use with both your in-class and your distance learners as formative assessments.